Ladies and gentlemen, in this RedGaming.com video, we're going to be discussing misinformation and biased opinions from the media. Now, what we're really hammering home here is biased opinions in either printed magazines, websites, big gaming websites, or blatant misinformation regarding specifications or X. Now, before we really start, let's clarify what I mean by misinformation. We are not talking about something like, just for example, the PS4 was assumed to have 4 gigabytes of RAM because of a rumor, and then later on it was corrected to be 8. We're talking about misinformation in that magazines are reporting X when it's actually not true, or completely biased opinions. If you're still a bit confused, allow me to elaborate a little bit further using a few examples of various bits and pieces that I've noticed recently, and then I'm going to give you my opinions on this. So, one of the big ones was actually concerning the PlayStation 4, and is actually really recently. You're probably aware of the 2.75 gigahertz myth of the PS4. In case you're not, what basically it comes down to is the FCC, Sony were reported to say the maximum clock speeds inside the system. Various websites were actually printing is the wrong word, but posting that, so this means that the PS4's clock speed is 2.75 gigahertz. Wow, that's interesting. Or it's surprising that the PS4 is actually maximum clock speed is 2.75 gigahertz for the CPU, and so on and so forth. Of course, most likely it's actually nothing to do with the CPU at all. Most likely the cause of this is actually the memory. And yet, several fairly large websites, actually notorious websites, were printing information regarding to the CPU. And I don't like that, because if you're going to be running a gaming website or whatever, you should either have the technical team in place to know and do this research, or you should hire someone else before you run the stories, because especially if you're a well-respected one. Allow me to tell you why, because it's actually the memory most likely that's doing this. It's, well, you could just do the math on it. I'm not going to go into the whole thing. You guys can check out the video if you're that curious. But it's, well, the memory clock speed of the PS4. Most likely, in the AMD Jaguar CPU is most likely running at 1.6, although theoretically it can actually run at 2 gigahertz. Who knows, maybe that's scope for Sony to overclock in the future, who knows, by an update. But certainly nowhere near the 2.75 gigahertz. We know that running from 1.6 to 2 gigahertz on the Jaguar core actually increases the TDP by 66%. So you guys could do the math, what would happen if they went from 1.6 all the way up to, say, I don't know, even 2.4. You can imagine the difference. Let alone the 2.75, so I didn't really like that. That's pretty big misinformation in my personal opinion, and just a case of they've not done the research. Another one that I didn't like, you guys can Google this, it's all over the internet, it's pretty sensational, and that was Edge magazine said in their cover that the PS4 is your next console. And they basically stated, paraphrasing, but effectively it boils down to the fact that they believe that Microsoft don't have a chance and that the PlayStation 4 has already won the console battle. Once again, I don't like that stance. There's a couple of reasons. The first being that, well, Microsoft haven't lost anything. The systems haven't even been launched yet. Both systems have their inherent faults, both systems have their inherent weaknesses, and both systems have their inherent strengths, and, well, that's pretty much all there is to it. Now, I don't think Microsoft are going to be in the position, I don't think any of them are going to be in the position where no one buys them, and it's a clear-cut winner of which console you buy. That's not to say that for you, personally, that you may prefer to buy the Xbox, you may prefer the PS4, maybe you just prefer the GUI and the games of the Xbox, maybe the reverse for the PS4, whatever. Maybe all your friends have Xboxes and that's what they're intended to get, maybe all your friends have PlayStations. Maybe, you know, a PlayStation exploded in your house when you were young, burned it down, and ever since then you've never forgiven Sony. Whatever the reason, you know, you'll have your most likely you're biased, or maybe you'll buy both consoles, such as myself. My point being that that's you, and most likely, I'm not saying that you're not, but most likely you are not working for a magazine. So you could say that, you know what, you should buy a PS4, Jim, to your friend. That's cool. But as a magazine, you shouldn't be reporting that. It's okay to give opinions, because at the end of the day, as journalists, that's pretty much what you have to do. You have to give your opinion. Anyone on the channel who regularly watches knows that I am pretty damn honest with my opinions. I'm blatant with my opinions. If I don't like something, or I do like something, I will say. However, I also like to play devil's advocate. Next example, and this comes from a tech magazine. I don't normally read them, if I'm honest. I sometimes read PC Gamer. I sometimes buy PC Gamer, the UK edition, of course. But there was another magazine on the shelf. I honestly don't remember the name, because I just finished working out. I just basically come from the gym, and there's a supermarket right next to my gym. And so I was just looking there, and I was waiting for a friend. And we were just about to make a whole load of food, and then, well, just buy the whole load of food, and then, go home and eat, basically, from the gym. So I was just waiting, because they were just in the shower at the time. And so at the time, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm just going to read a few magazines. And so I was just reading a couple of the tech magazines on the shelves, not really having any intention to buy them. And I saw one that said it was going to give a comparison of PS4, Xbox One, and Steam, the Steam console, also known as Steambox. I had a brain fart there, I'll be completely honest. And I thought to myself, fantastic. Okay, we'll have a quick look. I didn't think I'd find anything particularly unique, but I do like to get other people's perspectives, especially in the media, because it's, well, good to, because maybe they've thought of something that I hadn't. So I read the PS4 specifications first, and okay, 8 CPU cores, running at X, 8GB GDDR5 memory, okay, fantastic, and a few other bits and bobs, fair enough. Then I read the Xbox One specifications, and one of the first things they said is that, well, the Xbox One is about as powerful as a cheap media PC. Those are their words, not mine. That is an exact quote. And furthermore, they then went on with the specifications. Now, the first thing, of course, that they did mention is the lacking GCN cores. And I have no problem with that. That's honest and that's true. But then I noticed the memory section, and the first thing they immediately honed in on was the fact that the console was using DDR3. And they pointed out that DDR3 isn't really fast enough to feed the graphics subsystem. Okay, with them there, agreed. So, where was the information regarding the ESRAM and the move engines and other bits and pieces that are vital for the Xbox One? They didn't list that. And I really didn't like that, because, okay, no one unbiased is going to say that the DDR3 plus ESRAM in many scenarios is going to perform as well as the GDR5 memory on the PS4, because there are obviously inherent problems with the ESRAM. But still, it definitely closes the gap significantly, and there is still debate on just how much behind the PS4's how much advantage PS4's memory is going to have in a lot of situations, simply because of the less GCN units on the Xbox One anyway. It's most likely going to be okay in many situations. Now, there are some issues with it, specifically large amounts of data that needs fast memory access. That's all okay, that's down to debate. Not going to argue either way in this particular video. However, they didn't mention that in this article whatsoever. There was no indication of that memory at all. No indication of the move engines, no nothing. Then I read about the Steambox, which was actually the primary reason that I was reading the article, because the magazine had just come out at the time, and I thought, I wonder if there's something new on the Steambox. Cool. Sometimes magazines, printed magazines, as you guys are aware, sometimes have a little bit of exclusives. I thought maybe they may have a tidbit of information that I wasn't aware of. First thing that struck me is they actually said the system was going to be using DDR2. I repeat, DDR2 memory inside it. Now, that's pretty interesting. The DDR2 spec, if you will, and even then I question it, comes from the Xi3 piston. Now, variants of that do actually have DDR2. However, there's been some clarifications and questions of whether even this is the base of the Steambox anymore. Because Valve's Doug Lambardi actually has said that the company no longer have any association with Xi3, despite the fact that they're actually giving funding to the company. And Xi3 have told Kotaku, on the other hand, that they were asked to build a product specifically for Valve, and also have said just because Valve may not currently have any involvement with any product of ours doesn't mean that such involvement might exist in the future. So that's all up in the air. No one really knows the specifications of the Steambox. So in my opinion, it's not really fair to even give a mention to the Steambox because, well, it's a cloud of steam at the moment. So what am I saying? Am I saying that no one's entitled to opinion? No, that's silly. Everyone's entitled to opinion. I could tell you this game, in my opinion, isn't fun. I could say that, in my opinion, this graphics card is a bit too expensive for the performance it delivers. Therefore, I would recommend this one instead. Same thing for any other website. They can say, okay, in my opinion, I don't like the past history of Microsoft or Sony, whatever one you want to use. I'm just going to use Microsoft to pick on them because I've picked on Sony for a while. So in which case, I would recommend instead you buy the PlayStation. That's all fine. You can have that opinion. But to biasly say that, one system has this huge, gargantuan advantage over the other is just not, in my opinion, cool. I've never been one to subscribe to the point of view of fanboyism. When I was really young, I'm talking young, I don't know how old, but basically when the Saturn, the Sega Saturn, and the PlayStation were first doing battle, for the first couple of years of Saturn's life, I would have considered myself a fanboy. But I was young, I only had one or two official Saturn magazines to read, or not even official, sometimes a couple of unofficial ones, and one official, and multi-format ones as well. A couple early on especially were really adamant, even the multi-format ones, that the Saturn was the go-to console, and very basic internet access. I would actually access it around a friend's house. And so, obviously, somewhat fanboy. But most of that as well was the fact that when I was really young, I grew up with, say, the Sega Genesis and various other bits and pieces. However, after a couple of years, I said to myself, this is ridiculous. I'm just going to go ahead and buy a PlayStation. And I did, and I bought several games with it at the start, and I loved the system as well. And ever since then, I've always tried to buy at least two of the current generation consoles. For example, I bought the original I bought the PS2, the GameCube, and the Xbox. I bought the Xbox 360, the Wii, and the PS3, and most likely I'll probably get milked by all of the companies again, just because, although I haven't bought a Wii yet, that's mostly because of the games lineup doesn't currently interest me. That's not to say it won't in the future. Similarly, I'm fairly adamant to the fact that primarily I am a PC gamer. I do like PC gaming. I don't think that I'm ever going to love PC gaming. I prefer some of the modability of it. I love the generally better graphics, and especially on certain games, I do prefer keyboard mouse controls. But that doesn't mean that I can't love consoles. My point being on this, I've never really liked fanboyism, but a lot of these biased opinions that are going around and so on, they really help to influence misinformation, as a whole. Helps to increase biasness. It increases, these arguments, and it's okay to debate the performance of a console. That's fun and that's cool, but just to defend a system or have a point of view of a system because obviously that is the system that you own, and just to do so in a manner that's not constructive, it's just not, how to go about things. But I can understand it because, you know, at the end of the day, you are not working in a media outlet, most likely. But on the other hand, when someone who is supposedly a professional, we're not talking, you know, even a YouTuber here, we're talking about magazines or big websites, ones that should feel of a sense of responsibility to inform their fan base or their readers that, you know, here's how it is. And I understand that one of the difficulties in this is that readers, they want things broken down to them. Now, I've mentioned several times over that I don't really read many magazines now. I actually, generally speaking, people have asked me a couple of times, what websites do I view? What websites do I peruse? And a lot of the time, it's actually developer websites and tech websites that have been around for a long time, or I'll, you know, look at white papers and stuff and try to draw my own conclusions as much as possible. Or I'll read a couple of articles and say, okay, I like the sound of that, is it true? And then I'll do my own research. And that's why, when I'm doing these videos, and a couple of people on the channel do know this, because I do have a couple of you on Facebook as actual friends, but those guys know that in terms of actual work I put in, if I get a news piece that's a tech piece, I'll actually be putting about 2 to 3 hours on it. And that's not to say that I won't make mistakes, because at the end of the day, specs change. Like, a great example was just a couple of days ago with the PS4 memory. There were leaks going around that the PS4's memory quantity, the amount of memory, was X. Next day, quite literally the next day, I actually recorded a video based on updated specifications. I was literally just about to edit it, and I checked a couple of other websites just to give myself a mental break for a second, and suddenly I just caught out the corner of my eye that an update had happened to this very same story. So I read the update, and guess what? That article, or that video that I just recorded, was no longer viable. It was completely rubbish because Sony had spoken. My point being that because Sony had spoken, they'd categorically said how certain things work, you can then speculate, and all my speculation from the previous information was now wrong, because as it turns out, new information had come out, and therefore, obviously, I had speculated based upon the old information. So now I had to release another video, and so I did. I deleted the other one, completely nuked, and I started over again. So from about 35 minutes of recording time to another 30 odd minutes of recording time, and that's not including the research beforehand. And I'm not saying that because I'm trying to make myself sound cool here or whatever. I'm just merely pointing out that I feel that I have a responsibility to report things as unbiased and accurately as possible, and obviously everyone makes mistakes, including myself. I have made a couple. Without question, I have tried to correct myself the best as possible. Maybe there are a couple I haven't even realized I have made, but that's why I encourage you guys to check stuff out for me. I actively encourage you guys to post on Facebook and say, you know what, dude, have you missed this out? Or dude, you know, here's a story you missed, or whatever. And I like that, because sometimes I get viewers that actually message consistently on Facebook. Go to facebook.com/redgamingtech, and I honestly have messages right now that I haven't read or responded to, and it's not because I'm blanking you guys, it's simply because there is a lot to do, and today's actually supposed to be a bit of a break, but I'm still recording anyway. And so yeah, I don't like it, because I think that it sends the wrong messages. I don't think that any magazine or any website, for that matter, should actively tell you which consoles you should support. I don't think that it's down to them to spin things for someone, because that's not really... That just seems crap for everyone concerned, because you as a customer, you as a gamer, you don't know who to believe. I mean, there's stories of big websites. I'm not going to bother to mention names. You, by all means, you probably know about some of the stuff anyway. But there have been reports of numerous large websites. We're talking about game websites here, not really the tech stuff. Receiving bribes. I mean, you guys can Google this, by all means, I actually encourage you to. Because I haven't done too much research on that side of things myself, because it just pisses me off too much to actually do that too much research on that, and I'd probably create like a 20-minute rant section just on that alone. 20 minutes, as if. Mark about 50 knowing me, but regardless. And people have actually taken bribes, and a couple of people have actually gotten fired over stuff like Metacritic, or fired over, I'm either going to say stuff like not accepting or giving a game bad review. In fact, there have been instances where a reviewer, gave a game a bad review, they have gotten fired, and then that review was updated with a better score. So I'm just going to use an arbitrary numbering system here. Let's assume that you make a game called, Super Soldier 15. You say to a website, okay, well, I'm going to advertise on your website. Cool, bro, I say. Okay, and I farm it out to one of my reviewers, and I say, well, okay, well, make sure that you give a reasonable review here, because, they just paid me X, whatever X is. And then my reviewer goes ahead and gives the game, let's assume, a 5 out of 10. Let's just use arbitrary figures. And obviously, you as a company are going to be pissed, right? Because, well, you just paid all this money advertising, and then suddenly I'm giving you... I'm basically putting the advert right there. The advert, the banner, and everything else is right next to this crappy score. And so I fire my dude, and then I amend their review, and I'll put it up to like 8 or 8.5. And there have been cases of people doing this, and it's all over the internet. You can Google it. I'm not going to mention names or shame any websites or whatever, because I don't like doing that. You guys are aware of that. Because I don't think it's professional to do so. So you guys can do your own research on that. It's right there, and I don't think that's cool at all, because then it comes down to a simple case of who the hell do you trust? And there are YouTubers that I don't necessarily subscribe to all of their opinions. Sometimes some of their opinions irritate me, and they do first impressions or whatever. But one thing I will say is that they are honest. If they don't like something, they don't like something. On the other hand, I have played the game after them, and I've said I don't really understand how, they couldn't like this section. Or other times they've played a game and I thought to myself, this game is bloody awful. Why do you like this? It's just, terrible. But that's up to them, End of the day, they're just being honest. Not everyone has the same opinion, and that's all cool, and that's fine. No one can expect a reviewer to have the same exact taste as you. That's one of the reasons that I would highly recommend that if you're going to do something like this, find a website or YouTube channel, such as this one, hopefully, that you trust, and then use that as a gauge and say, okay, this guy, generally speaking, or this girl even, say, they generally have the same taste as me, or maybe they have the same thought pattern as me, or maybe, sometimes they prefer, I don't know, X and I prefer Y, but generally speaking, I trust their opinion. If they say that the game's a broken piece of crap, the game is a broken piece of crap. And that's all there is to it at the end of the day. And I think the same thing should be said for consoles as well. Don't give misinformation on the specifications. Sure, as I said, print media does have a definite disadvantage in that, let's assume that your magazine is released on the 1st of every month. So let's assume, in this case, what's next month, he says, because he can't actually remember the date, because he's terrible like that. It's August next month. Oh god, this year's going too fast. It's August next month, obviously. And so, obviously, he says after he had to check his own calendar. That's what you get when you have late nights. Let's assume that a magazine's released on August the 1st. And let's assume that as the time that they went to the press, they believed that all information was correct because their that was the rumours, that was the speculation going about. And then on the, say, the 22nd of August, just to pull a figure out my butt, it turns out that that information was incorrect. They can't do anything about that because, well, right then and there, they can't immediately adjust it. On their websites they can report that, and that's fine, and then the next issue they can do something, but right then and there they can't. But to flagrantly disregard either certain specifications or to give an opinion, I don't like it. Anyway, I could rant for a long ass time on this subject. I honestly could, because it's a huge subject, and actually this is one of the reasons that I don't like Nintendo's stance on YouTube. You can do some Googling on that as well. Nintendo YouTube, that's all over the internet. Because I think that fans, in this case, are probably going to be their best bet to really become popular again. But that's another subject. I've already spoken about it anyway, so you can always go to the channel if you're that curious. But anyway, that's just about it for this particular video. I wasn't actually supposed to be doing anything today. It was supposed to be my day off. I've not actually had one in, I don't even know how long now, but let's just say a while. But I am going to be going on holiday this year, so yay. But for now, this is all from me. If you have any thoughts on this, I would love to hear them. You can either directly drop me a line on Facebook, facebook.com/redgamingtech, or you can bombard the comment section. I probably won't read them, not being harsh. It's just honest truth that I say I will, but I just don't. And it's not because I'm blanking you guys, it's just because I have so much to do. I'm honestly working about 12 to 14 hours a day because I'm doing a full-time job, plus running RGT, plus trying to do other bits and pieces. I'm also trying to learn in my own spare time coding, a lot more on game design and various other bits and pieces, so I can put better videos out for you guys. So anyway, so your best bet is just to stalk me directly on Facebook. You can just go to facebook.com/redgamingtech, address me directly. That would be Paul or Crimson Rain, whatever you want to say, because there's a couple of us on the channel. Anyway, that's about it for this particular video. Hopefully you found it at least a little bit of food for thought. Anyway, I'm going to get going. Take care. Bye for now.